think we're live.
Yeah.
Hello. Let's see.
Hi, Janine. Just to say you are live, so you can feel free to start.
Yes, but I was wondering if we have enough people so we can start.
Yes, yeah. These talks start. We start straight away.
Okay, perfect. Let's go then.
Right.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this new edition of the Florence and Together. My name is Jaline Gael-Judy. I'm co-director and vice president of Black History Month Project, which is part of, which organized a couple of events this month. And Black History Month, it's a non-profit association which has the aim to enlighten Black cultures in Italy and beyond. And I want to thank the Florentines who have been collaborating with us for a couple of years, and especially on the February issue, which we will be talking about today. We started a column with the Florentine a couple of months ago called Whoever Drinks Black Earns Colors. And Theo is Theophilus is one of the writers of the special edition we curated for the Florentines February issue. Just to let you know, you can already start with your question, and then we will treat them at the end of the conversation. I will start with a short introduction of Theophilus. But hello, Theophilus, even if we talked a little bit earlier. So Theophilus Imani has been trained in medicine and surgery at the University of Pavia, Italy. Alongside his medical education, he has cultivated a profound interest in African diaspora studies and visual cultural studies, with a special focus on contemporary African art from the African continent and the diaspora. His attention to Black visual art has produced Echoes and Agreement, which is the topic we'll be discussing today, the project we'll be discussing today. So Echoes and Agreement examines the question of otherness and racial hierarchy through a series of diptychs that pair canonical European paintings and with photographs hailing from the Black diasporas. Initiative has an experimental work on social media. The series offers alternative ways of reading images in isolation from their original context. The images in each diptych accrue meanings as they comment on one another. And this series of images was created as a dialogue with the virtual exhibition On Being Present. We curated firstly with Uffizi Gallery in 2020, and which the next edition will be launched tomorrow. And that project was curated by Justin Random Thompson, the co-founder and co-director of Black History Month. So Theo, could you tell us a little bit about Echoes and Agreement and how that project started? Because I know you've been working on that project for a couple of years, and it's one of your long-term projects. So could you tell us a little bit how it started and why you decided to tackle these themes of race and identity on that specific way?
Yeah, so basically this project in a sense reflects my own experience as being a diasporic subject born and raised here in Italy. So I wanted to represent this in-betweenness that I live in my daily life with a project that showcased my two cultural backgrounds, my European background and my African background. This project, let's say, is a result of my way of seeing the artworks, and it also, let's say, in a way, it parallels to a way of seeing that is also required in the medical field. I remember one of the first exams that I sit, I think it was histology exam. I was looking at different tissues, and the professor asked me what I was seeing. And the professor was not interested in me guessing the name of the tissue, but he was interested in me describing the colors, the forms of what I was seeing. So I think there is correlation between how both practices, like the practice of seeing in the medical field, and the practice of seeing, of looking in the art field. Because in the case of the doctor, for instance, when let's say a radiologist looks at an X-ray imaging, for instance, he interprets the colors and the shapes, and he translates these forms to the viewer, that is the patient. Whereas in the case of the art field, we have an art historian or a curator who explains the artwork to a viewer. So I like to see this correlation between these two different practices. So I try to translate uh, this this engagement with the image in the artistic field, trying to translate my own experience of this in-betweenness that I live.
And I think also, yeah, translating your own experience, but also, as you pointed out, usually you have the curator giving a direction, or a curator or a museum or an institution giving a direction on how to look at an image, how to look at a painting, and doing it that way, especially with those Renaissance painting. You also inviting the viewer to see those artwork in a different way, in a different gaze, and also in a contemporary gaze too. Jane, maybe we can see. Can you share a couple of images from Echoes and Agreement? So, for example, tell us a little bit about the research part. So, how you pick the picture that will respond to the historic artwork. So, how do you tell us a little bit about the process?
Yeah, I think that we are all associative in one way or the other. My knowledge on uh, art history comes from high school, where I studied um, history of art. So that is the place where my knowledge of European artworks come from. Whereas in the case of African contemporary art, comes from my own interest, my own research in trying to articulate my experience. I've always been interested in diaspora studies, African diasporic studies, and I found that the artistic language was suited for me to describe, as I said, my experience. So the research, I think, most of the diptychs um, are the result of my own, let's say, knowledge that I accumulated over the years. So sometimes I spend time in the online collection of museums looking at paintings, and then a particular paintings reminds me of a certain photograph or certain artwork that I saw, or either in person or online.
From
And
Seydou Keita, right?
yeah,
Yes.
and I think one of the let's say statement that inform my this project is from Toni Morrison in The Origin of Others, where she wrote that there are no strangers, but only version of ourselves that we have not embraced or we have not recognized. So I try to showcase this statement, this concept that the other is a version of ourselves, and it is this um, and this encountering with an unknown version of selves that sometimes scares us. So I just wanted to.
For example, the images we're seeing right now,
Mhm.
what I was saying earlier, it also gives another perspective. When we see, if you look at these two images separately, this painting, I don't know, it's a Renaissance painting as well, the one on the
No,
left.
the one of the left is by Agostino Bruñas,
Okay.
a South American painter, and it
Okay.
depicts a scene in the in the Americas. And particularly on this diptych, what I wanted to showcase is because I didn't want to focus only on the dialogue between European and African context, but I wanted to focus also on the similarities that exist between different diasporic communities.
Between,
So,
yeah, between
sorry.
different diasporas communities, but also how, it speaks to me also in a different way because
Mhm,
yes, it shows similarities in terms of culture, but also, as you said, in terms of how we see images. Because if you look at the second images, which is a
mhm,
picture of a dance in a village somewhere in Africa, it will the first way people will look at it will be under the gaze of exotization of it.
yeah.
Why together with a painting like this, it gives a different meaning. We tend to because we tend to look at this picture, such as the one on the right side, has anthropologic pictures.
Mhm.
That we relate to in a very exotic way. And I think this kind of superposition break, that kind of gaze that has been going on for centuries, actually.
Yes, it tells of the dignity of the other. So it invites the viewer to see this dignity that the white gaze has eclipsed. Um, so yeah, and as I was saying, I also wanted to showcase like the changing same that we experience in the in the African diaspora context, and how the concept of cool remain intact despite the traverse of the Atlantic Ocean. So that was I was trying to say or to translate in this diptych.
Okay. And yes, what I'm quite curious about, and that's why I was asking, because you train in medicine, but
Mhm.
it requires like special skills to dig into archives and really and skills and a certain discipline to dig into archive and find the best, let's say the best match for one another. So yes, and I want to know. I want to, even if you already respond to it a little bit, um, how, like at the beginning, was it too difficult to put these images together? And today, how that kind of research evolved in your work?
I didn't find much difficulty in putting the first diptychs together. Actually, when I started at the end of 2017,
Mhm.
like in a period of, let's say, 1 week, I was able to create, let's say, like 100 diptychs. And
Mhm.
so I thought that the series would have ended like in a short period of time. But then, as I was trying to find other images, I saw that I was able to create this dialogue, and I was able to propose new sentences in the way we read the images. And for instance, in this diptych where I put a photograph of Martin Luther King being arrested with um, a painting by Caravaggio, what I was trying to examine is how the black body in the diasporic context can be parallel to the body of Christ. So a body upon which uh, horrors and violence has been inflicted. And thinking of the black body in relation to the body of Christ, I'm also thinking of art historian Cheryl Finlay, uh, in her seminal book, Committed to Memory, she analyzed the image of the slave ship from an art historical point of view. And in her view, the image of the slave ship, which she called an icon in the visual culture of the African diaspora, could be compared to another icon represented by the crucifixion, because both of the images were a symbol of both death and rebirth. And in thinking of the slave ship in relation to the crucifixion, Finlay says that the enslaved African in the ship suffered the same cruelty of the Christ on the cross. But I wanted to push her thinking a little bit further and extend this examination also in the present days, where the diasporic terrain, which is inhabited both uh, by the diasporic subject and the subject that is deemed a native, the diasporic space can represent both a space of home and of terror, because the same geographical space is experienced in different ways by these two subjects. So I wanted to showcase how this is true. This is true to this day, where uh, the experience that the black body lives of a particular space is different from the experience that a white body lives. And also, I think it's interesting if we analyze this diptych and also the following one, where I compare uh, the black experience to the Passion of Christ. It's also interesting to think of the fact that in the Renaissance period, the Passion of Christ were depicted in such a way where the tormentors of Christ were black figures. So the black figure always represented the hostile subject that were perpetrating a crime against the innocent Jesus. So the whiteness of Jesus, in a kind of way, represented the purity, whereas the blackness represented the evil. And I wanted to shift this perspective, thinking of trying to view the black body as Christ, as and as an innocent body that injustice have been meted upon him.
Perfect. Can we continue to scroll a little bit? And what about these images? The previous one.
Yeah, so these two images, both of them are details of a larger picture. The one on the left is by a French caricature, Honoré Daumier, and the title of the image is Ecce Homo, and it represents the time where Jesus is presented in front of a crowd and is being accused by the crowd. Whereas on
the next, no, I think you're talking about the next images actually. This one, right?
No, the other one.
The previous one?
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so the both halves are details of images, and the one on the left is a detail of a lynching photograph, where this man is showing, where this the man photograph is pointing to the lynching to the bound and lynching bodies that we cannot see because the images are cropped. And going back to the similarity that Dr. Cheryl Finlay analyzed in her book, we can see how the crucifixion can be indeed compared to the experience of the black body, where in this case the black body is represented by innocent black men that are lynched and hanged from a tree.
Okay. And plus, what I also know is you also study this project has a Black Italian and has, you know, your own representation in the Italian culture. So how this project, because we have a lot of pictures from American social demonstration, but also some images from African photographers and so on. But how this project tells how this project tells about Black representation in the Italian how this project tells about the Black representation in the in the Italian context. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if we go to the next image, the other one, also the other one, sorry. Yeah, for instance, like this one, the photograph is a family photo of my father holding me, and I think this picture speaks of both performance and performativity. So performance in the sense that is enacted by the pose of my father and his attitude of looking away from the camera, but it also speaks of performativity. And when I say performativity, I mean in the event that takes place in the eyes of the viewer, who is willing to not just see the photograph but look at the photograph and unveil the information and the meanings that are at rest or are latent in the image. So, for instance, if we look at this photograph of me and my father, what is interesting to consider is that this photograph was taken at the beginning of the 1990s in Verona, and it speaks of the diasporic formation that was taking place in those years, because in the year between the late 1980s and the early 1990s, we saw the shift of the social landscape in Italy, where for the first time in Italian history, the number of people coming into the country exceed the number of the people going out of the country. So I think it's interesting to analyze these visualities that are uncovered in the narration of the diaspora in Italy, and pairing the photograph to a Flemish painting. It also speaks of how we can render God's image in ebony, to quote Frederick Douglass, and in the way also that photography represented a revolutionary tool for Black folks in self-representation. And I think that this photograph doesn't only reflects or shows the self, but at the same time, it makes the self. So a self that is both a being and a becoming. And, and the becoming is represented both by my father and also by me, that but that by myself, that I represent this sort of quote unquote new Italian generation.
But that's very interesting, and also it's like I said earlier. Looking at an image, it's something very, and we continue on that perspective you were telling earlier with these images, actually, because also, especially when I look at this one, for example, you know, have this white woman with very, we see like baroque garments and very,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a certain uh, bourgeois posture, and on the other side you also have, it also gives you the same sense. And let's talk about how we look at an image, because I think this whole project is about how we look at an image, because I remember I'm in Morocco now, but I used to live in Italy too for about 7 years. And I remember one of the first time I tried to understand, the Black presence in Renaissance painting, and I was attending a guided tour at the Palazzo Strozzi in Florence, and the art historian who was giving the tour, she didn't take too much time, she was explaining the artworks and everything. I think it was a Bronzino. It was a long time ago. And one of the painting was showing a young boy, a young white boy with a young black boy. And she was focusing on the black figure on the painting, on the white figure on the painting. And I was surprised. And I asked her, so what about the black figure on the painting? And she said, oh, it's probably a slave. And then she moved forward. and I think, and I think that exact day, I thought, "Whoa, that was a lot." So that's also why a project like this one, and putting in the context of the On Being Present project we're doing at the Uffizi Gallery, will also help people to look at images or whether pictures or painting in a different way, because every character in a painting, in a picture, matters in a
Yeah.
certain way. And so I think for me, your project also invite people not only to look at your project, but trying to see a parallel between the two pictures, but inviting them to look at any images in an exhibition or even advertising in with their own gaze, And as I work in a museum too, and for me, for example, it's really important to invite the viewer to bring his own interpretation to the artwork and not focus on what the institution or what the curator tells you to find in an image. So for me, your project is also an invitation to look at the history with a different gaze.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to consider the fact that, uh, like in art history, like the motive of uh, an European standing with an attendant black servant was invented here in Italy by Tiziano in 1523, when he painted Laura Dianti, who was the wife of Alfonso d'Este di Ferrara, and where there was Laura standing with this black servant, and in a way, this though in that painting uh, there is not so much the sense um, of property, but more of maternal filial relation. The motive was then reproduced in the course in the course of centuries, signifying how the black subject, which in that case was more an object than a subject, was a property. And I think it's interesting to see how the the presence of the black figure, considering the fact that this motif was invented here in Italy, how the presence of the black figure has evolved in the representation of visual culture here in Italy, starting from Tiziano to the colonial postcard sent from Eritrea, to the present days, where the real, let's say, um, like the real representation of the black body is not found on mainstream media, but it's found on social media, where we we Afro-Italians have I've been creating new images to tell our story and to show ourselves the way we want to be seen.
100%. Also, what you just said earlier, I had an experience at a museum a couple of, no, 2 years ago, actually. A woman, an American woman who came to, okay, because I didn't say that at the beginning. I also work as exhibition director at the Museum of African Contemporary Art in Marrakesh, in Morocco. And this American woman, she came to visit the museum. We had an exhibition, a photographic exhibition, with featuring artists from the African continent and the diaspora. The title was Africa is No Island. And so she came to the museum, but that day the museum was closed. Actually, we're doing some renovation and preparing for that exhibition, for that show. And she was completely upset. She said, "I came here, da, 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 da." She didn't look at the website to see the museum was closed. And then she asked me, "Okay, what are you exhibiting? What is your next exhibition?" I tell her, "Our next exhibition, it's about photography." And then she just turned around and she said, "I'm here to see African art." And then and, and I was, okay, what is African art for you? So that's also the conversation we're having with today, with having those platforms where we can change the direction of art history. What you say, African, when people think about African art or African representation, they already have something in mind. They already have images in mind. And most of the time, exotic, like the images that they have seen in some history book, the only history book they know. But that's also why it's important today to change, to shift, that way of thinking about the Black body, the Black representation, and the Black present in art history from the Renaissance and beyond, and until today. Because even today, when people think about African art, they think about uh, sculptures or and something animistic, something that goes, always shamanic. But she didn't. For her, photography wasn't part of African art. She has a whole idea of what she wanted to see, and that's a very dangerous way of thinking, which so many people still have in mind. When they go to see a show about contemporary African art, some of them have expectation. If you show them an abstract painting, for example, they will be surprised. Oh, because they probably expect so many figurative artworks. So it's interesting to
Yeah.
to having this kind of conversation and having this kind of research. And Jane, could you share the full article, the article Theo wrote for this February issue of the Front End? So if people want to dig more into that topic, into the project Ecos and Agreement, they can read the full statement regarding that project. And I don't know if we already have some questions. If okay. Michelle Blackmount, where is this exhibition? Is it available for viewing online? Yes, the exhibition is available for viewing online. You have the first edition of On Being Present already on the Uffizi Gallery website. And then tomorrow, the second edition of On Being Present, Recovering Blackness in the Uffizi Gallery will be launched tomorrow. So we'll be able to view it. Unfortunately, it's only available online. Maybe at some point we'll be able to also have that kind of conversation inside of a museum, because it's also important to bring that conversation physically in a museum. Okay. There is no other question. How do you see the future of this project, Theo?
So I would like this project to let's say leave the virtual space of Instagram and become like an object, so a book, but it's it's a bit difficult trying to obtain in the let's say the copyright for the images that I would like to publish. So I think that in this new venture, it's interesting to ask ourselves, like, who owns what. Because many of the times, like the photographs of they said the photograph of showing African subject, like the copyrights of these images are not in the hands of the person portrayed, or the the society, the culture that should own this image. But yeah, I would like the aim is to publish, is to compile some of the images in a book, and let's hope that I can realize this project.
So for now, it's a digital project, and the hope is, and I think it will be a very important book to be published. So and today you said you have about more than 100 images.
No, at the so when I started the project, I compiled, let's say, 100 pairings in 1 week, but now I have more than 500.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay, has we hosted by the Florentine, who also has also has a publishing. So wink, wink. Just saying because I think it could be interesting to have a book putting together all these years of research, and I think it's a product that will be evolving through the years as well, because the more you dig, the more material you find.
Yes.
And we have, could you tell us about the polyptychs? Because I think you did some.
No. No, just diptychs. Just diptychs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't have any polyptychs.
But maybe I could consider this idea of trying to put together a polyptych. Yeah.
And indeed, why you only choose the diptych? Because some of those images actually can work well in a polyptych, but you decided to choose that format, that diptych, for a specific reason, or?
Yeah, just not really, like just a reflection of my own experience, and try to convey this idea of doubleness, that we cannot be ourselves without also being the other. So that was the main idea, the main reason why I chose the diptych.
To give that sense of togetherness.
Yeah.
Okay. And wait. And have you already have you been approached by, a part of Black History Month, of course,
Mhm.
maybe scholars or researchers working on that topic, or maybe institution? Have you ever been approached by someone or some institution to dig into that project, or for now it's only for you and you share it for maybe the first time?
So last year, an anthology was published by, I think, I don't remember the publisher, but it was edited by two American professors, Alexandra Moore and Samantha Pinto. And in the introduction of the book, which is titled "Writing Beyond the State," they analyzed in depth the series, focusing on one diptych in particular, where I juxtapose the description of a slave ship and the aerial photographs of a boat of migrant crossing the Mediterranean. And also, Professor Annalisa Frisina from the University of Padova wrote about it in a book, Razzismi Contemporanei. And I also had the chance to present the project in various conferences, such as Resignification in Palermo during Manifesto 2018, and then also the Afro-European Bridges Conference organized by Ca' Foscari University. and also had the opportunity to present the project at the Black Hero Summer School in Amsterdam, organized by Professor Kwame Nimakong. Yeah, so these are the places, the events where I had the chance to talk about the project.
And this is a deep historical discussion and a needed dialogue. Thank you. Sending love from California. And also, you raised that that problem, that issue earlier when we're talking about, maybe having the whole project in the publication at some point. But it's your project, but at the same time, it's not your project.
Yeah.
And yeah. which is a very tricky question. So yeah. I'm wondering how some of the owners of the right of these images, that's also why you said who owns what, how some of the owners of the images react when you contact them for this project.
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't always have a positive answer or a better understanding of what how you will be using those images. So tell us a little bit about this behind the scene.
Yeah, I think it's a bit problematic because, for instance, in the case of photographs of painting, like the archivist decides if I had the permission to reproduce the photograph of such painting. So, like in that case, if I want to abide by the law, I cannot publish. I cannot reprint. I cannot reprint the image, and yeah. So I think I have to hope that the people I will contact will share the same sensitivity, so that they will eventually understand the meaning behind the project. And in fact, like on Instagram, I've always accompanied the project just with the title, the hashtag, because I've always believed that the project would have found its audience. So I think that this conviction of mine is revealed to be true.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also ask it because even when you're building an exhibition, for example, and you want to lend an artwork, this is why when you say who owns what, it's a very big question in the art industry, because when an institution or a private person acquire a work, it belongs to the owner, to the person who buy the artwork, or it still belongs to the artist.
Yeah.
The intellectual work belongs to the artist. Because, for example, you have some collectors who refuse to loan very critical or very important work for exhibition. So, and I always find it quite frustrating, because for me, even as a collector, when you acquire an artwork, art is supposed to be shared, because art is supposed to bring people together. So if you purchase a piece of art, it's also with the aim of continue the idea of the painter, of the artwork you purchase. So you should be open to sharing it with other people and giving the right to Theophilus use and try to shift the way we think about art and art history. I think we're good. I think we can conclude here. Only if you have a special project you're working on and you want to talk about, you want to announce.
No. Let's leave it for later events.
And so I want to thank the Florentine for having us today, and thank them and thanks them as well for always supporting Black History Month and our project and all the collaboration we've been building together through the years. And thank you, Theo, for giving us this insight of your project Echoes and Agreement. And I take this occasion to invite our audience to to look at the full program of Black History Month. And in that way, I already invite you to tune in on Musicus Consensus, because we have a live concert tonight of Italian artist David Blank. Will be go live on Musicus Consensus Facebook tonight. And tomorrow, the second edition of On Being Present, Recovering Blackness at the Uffizi Gallery will be launched. So you will be able to have more understanding and also to dig more about this topic of, representation of Blackness in Renaissance painting. And at this point, I thank you all for attending this, and I look forward to seeing you all at some Black History Month events. This year we mostly have online events, but we're really happy that we managed to put together a program despite the condition we're all living in. And I also invite you to support Black History Month as a non-profit association. It's a project that we build with our heart and a teeny tiny support. So we also appreciate any support from it, as well as supporting the Florentine, who have been doing an amazing work in terms of sensibilizing the international audience about the history of Florence, about the life in Florence, and with this edition to also create a platform where we can have critical thinking. So yes, I invite you to support the Florentine and Black History Month. And on this, I wish you a very lovely weekend. Thank you.
Thanks.